Aloha and warm Pacific greetings, everyone. It's a beautiful day, though it's a little bit cloudy over here in the heart of South Auckland, Manurewa, or Rewa Heart, as some people like to call it, or Rewa Lice. And we're really, really privileged in this podcast episode to have Norma Lauteru with us today. Counsellor extraordinaire, crisis counsellor, here in our series on palliative care. We're super, super privileged in this episode to have with us Norma share her journey in this whole palliative care series, her experience of palliative care, but also just wanted to have our listeners in this podcast really listen to her heart. She's an experienced counsellor, Pasifika counsellor, a lot of years of experience, and I wanted to hear a little bit about that too, as well as what it's like for her now in this new part of her life journey. So, thank you everyone for listening in and tuning in again to our Urban Resilience podcast. It's always a real privilege to bring you here into this space and for you to hear stories and also information about our Pasifika communities and how we are able to keep on working through challenges and crises in life to bring us through to new phases and new opportunities and new doors. So here's a new door for us today. We're really privileged, Norma, to have you here with us. And, as we shared earlier, it's just you and I having a easy talanoa. You're a counsellor for many years. You're used to this business. This is your day in, day out, Norma. So, maybe just share a little bit about who you are, just your journey story. And, we just heard before about what you used to be doing as a crisis counsellor, just the hard graft that it was. So over to you, Norma, just to share a little bit about who you are and, what's brought you here today.
Kia ora, talawhalawa. My name is Norma Lauteru. I am Samoan, but I was born here in Auckland, New Zealand. I have been a counsellor now for about 10 years. So recently I graduated 2011 at Laidlaw College, and so I've been doing counselling with children. I've worked with adolescents and also adults, more recently in the crisis team with sexually abused clients for about 4.5 years. And and just recently was working at for a UK organisation called Shout as a tech service, so I was a supervisor, supporting clients who were texting in. A lot of them had mental health issues, suicide, self-harm were sort of some of the main ones, relationship issues, so those kinds of things. So just being able to support them.
You were sharing earlier on your actual journey into counselling, right?
Yeah.
You didn't really expect to go into this.
Well, I'd been working in accounts for years, and then I think my uncle passed away, and so I was reflecting on his life and where I wanted my life to be. And so what happened was I looked at my two passions, and my two passions were God and people. So I wanted something that incorporated those two. So I ended up going to an open day at Laidlaw, and I kind of came away thinking, there wasn't really anything there that I thought that I wanted to do.
Right.
But then that was the week that my uncle died. I was thinking, maybe there was something that I was meant to do at Laidlaw, but I hadn't found it yet. So I was actually going to ring them the next day and find out what other courses they had, because a lot of the courses that I kind of attended on the open day were to do with theological courses.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were really wanting to do theology?
No, I was wanting to stay away from theology.
Fair enough.
But the day that I was going to ring them, a prospectus actually turned up in the mail.
Did it?
So I was flicking through it, and there was the counselling course. So I thought,
inside the prospectus form.
So I thought, that's what I want to do. But on the other page was another
Meant to be there, huh?
Another one called, I was on the Bachelor in Ministries, and it was in different areas that you can go into.
Okay.
And one of them was pastoral care, which I've always been interested in that area, but I thought, oh no, I'll just go and apply for the counselling. But when I applied for the counselling, they said, we want you to do this course. We suggest you do this course and come back at the end of that year and apply for the counselling. So I did a Bachelor in Ministries course, not knowing what it was, because it doesn't have anything, there's nothing in the name that says theology.
Right.
So 3 months into it, I actually realised a lot of the people that I was studying with were either, wanting to become ministers or associate pastors, or they were ministers in churches, like retraining and stuff like that. And
So
I was thinking,
you couldn't avoid it.
yeah, and I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. But I wanted to do the counselling, so I did the course. But I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. The lecturers were great.
Right.
They were very encouraging and supportive, and the people that I met, while I was there, was such an amazing journey. I mean, I spent the first 2 years off campus, and so I used to drive in.
Yep.
And then I spent the last 4 years living on campus. So I was there for 6 years.
Gee,
So the
what an
course was
experience.
originally 4 years, but because the counselling hours I needed to do, I hadn't completed all my counselling hours, so they extended that for another year. By that time, they had bought the Bachelor in Counselling out, so it was another year to do that. So I did another. So I've been there 5 years, so
absolutely
what's
love
another
Laidlaw,
year?
right?
So yeah, so that's how I ended up becoming a counsellor. I also graduated with a degree in theology with the Bachelor in Ministries.
Oh, so double degrees.
Yeah.
Should I say triple? Because now you've got ministry, you've got counselling, and you've got pastoral.
Yeah, so, doing all those things. But I ended up volunteering when I came out of counselling. I didn't have a job, but I ended up volunteering for an organisation, and I did 6 months there, and then that's where my journey started, really, because from there I ended up getting a paid job, and I was doing part-time work with Lifeline.
Okay, Lifeline.
So yeah,
that was sort of your first foray into working as a counsellor after the years of training.
Yeah.
But was it a good experience? Like the 6 years you had the pastoral, you had the ministries, and the counselling. Would you say that was a real good foundation for what you prepared you for what you then ended up going and doing in counselling?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I think my years there and my experiences there, I mean, sometimes while I was studying, I felt like I was in training because there was stuff that was going on, and I was still kind of supporting people while I was studying. So I kind of felt like there was a parallel between my studies and also what I was, the journey, and like I was practicing, there was kind of like this parallel journey going on. So I would learn something, and the next thing I know, I'm feeling like I'm going through that experience, and I'm, God is kind of putting a practical experience there for me to pick up. So I kind of felt, that there was always a practical aspect to the stuff that I was learning.
So
that
like
was coming.
action learning.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't. There was a course, but then things were happening in life that allowed you to sort of enact what you were learning at the time.
Yeah.
Gee, that's amazing.
Yeah. And while I was studying, I was also working part-time. So I was studying full-time, working part-time. And that was kind of allowing me to sort of help me with because accommodation, living on campus and stuff like that.
Yes. And was the enacting the things all part and parcel of being an island family? Or just the island community in general?
Excuse me. Yes, it was. So
take your time, Norma. That's fine. I just laughed because you were talking about, doing you're learning this thing around counselling, but at the same time things are happening so you can actually practice it, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, isn't that like the norm of our Pasifika family?
Yeah.
And just perhaps
There's a lot
we're
of
taking
similarities.
it and using it now in a different way. Eh?
Yeah. So, and there was one point where I actually almost gave up on the counselling, and that's only because we had a lecturer who didn't understand Māori Pacific.
Right.
So he came from the States. He didn't have any understanding of Māori Pacific. And he was, like, some of the comments that he made kind of really kind of got to me in terms of, just wanting to give up. It kind of knocked my self-esteem and my confidence. But I went away and I prayed about it. And it was like God opened the way and he said, he doesn't understand you, Norm. So I went and spoke to one of she was the head of the counselling department at that stage, Joyce, and she just, when I went to speak to her, because she knew me really well, and she knew, like what I was like in terms of how I, in terms of a Pacifica, way of life and the way that I think and that kind of thing. So when I spoke to her, she said exactly the same thing. She said, he doesn't understand you, Norma, and you need to write about your Pacific culture in your essays. And so that kind of kept me there.
It was like the seed to push back and to help other people understand the ways that you actually obviously needed to contribute to their program, right?
Yeah.
So were they quite Western or quite Palangi?
Yeah, in their views. And because they didn't have any, they didn't have that connection with the Māori Pacific and how we think and how we write. And Joyce actually got a group of us together, and we still meet up. And they call ourselves the chili con carne gang, only because we have chili con carne there. But, she got a group of us together, and she ended up doing a survey, gave us a questionnaire sheet. She invited us all to dinner because she knew that was the only way she was going to get us to fill it in.
So she was using her Pacific.
Yeah, she's European, but she was using the Pacific way of, doing things. So she invited us to dinner, gave us these survey questions to answer, and she watched and observed us, and we didn't know that. She was watching and observing us. So she gave us all a sheet of paper. We sat there. We all went through the questions together as a group and discussed them. And then we all sat down and wrote our answers. And she comes back to the table and she says, if you're a group of Palangis, she said, you would have all just sat down and wrote your answers and not had a discussion. She said, what you did was very Pacific in terms of you sat, you discussed everything, and then you all sat down and wrote your individual answers.
Gee, you schooled them, right? In the Pacific ways of learning, eh? And the fact that you can still come away with writing your own and own your own answers, but the way you get there can be all together. It can work.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
you've had a real amazing life journey, Norma, in terms of what you've done, like in terms of studying and how you've, even in that time, really rewrote the script for Pasifika in that organisation, I'm sure, and then come from that into counselling, into your journey now. I mean, do you think for you that's all been part and parcel of this journey for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's all been part and parcel of, like, this journey that I've been on. I mean, I am really grateful for the things that I learnt, even though it was a real struggle and sometimes it was very hard, when I'm like trying to find finances to pay my accommodation, and I'm saying to God, I don't know, I'll need to leave this place and I need to find somewhere else to stay because I can't afford to stay here. And God's saying, your grace is sufficient for me. And I'm like, yeah, but your grace is not going to pay my bills. But God always opens a door, so I go to see the lady who's in charge of accommodation, and she's just saying, oh, well, actually, I was actually looking to hire someone to clean the building. Are you interested in doing that, for cheaper accommodation sort of thing? And so,
And that happened.
that
Provided.
just happens, And so,
Oh, wow.
there were times when I'm thinking, oh, I just need to give up. But God always opens the door.
The doors just keep opening
Yeah.
divinely in that place that you weren't meant to be in the first place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
But from that, this new platform came for you in counselling, and your journey opens up in Lifeline.
Yeah.
And you have a whole decade in counselling before you need to give it up for where you're at right now,
Yeah.
in terms of your own journey and palliative. And tell me a little bit about that, Norma.
I was actually diagnosed probably about 3 years now ago. In 2020
Right.
was when I was diagnosed. So I was actually seeing an oncologist, and I was on medication to help with my cancer. And I
And
think
at the time, did you know? Like, were you experiencing some?
Yeah,
illness
so
prior?
before that, I kind of had this really chesty cough and was shortness of breath. And so, the doctors just thought I was asthma, and so, I was on asthma pumps and stuff like that, but none of that seemed to be working, and I wasn't sure what was going on. But I actually ended up in hospital because I was coughing so much and I hurt my side, and I was scared I'd done some damage. So I went to A&E, and that's where I was diagnosed. So that was in February 2020. Yeah.
That was tough, huh?
Yeah, it was really tough hearing that. And then also having to tell my family, because I was in hospital at that time. I'd gone in. I just said to my sister, just drop me off at the hospital, and because she was on a course.
Right.
So I said, just drop me off at A&E, and I'll go there, and you can go to your course. So they didn't know. So I was there by myself when I was told all of this information, and so just processing
You weren't
it.
expecting it.
Yeah, because it was not what I was expecting, and so, but it made sense in terms of how I had been feeling, because I kept feeling like there's something more to this than just, these symptoms. It's not. It doesn't seem like just asthma. It seems like something more, but I wasn't sure, so it wasn't until the doctor said, they took a chest x-ray, and then they said, oh, there's some shadows, and so we'll need to take a CT scan, and so they did the CT scan, and then they came back and they said, yeah, the CT scan has confirmed that you've got cancer in your lungs, but they also wanted to see whether it was from somewhere else in my body or not, because I'd had a hysterectomy years ago, and so they wanted to see whether it was connected to that or not, and it actually was, because they did a biopsy. So I actually have what's called metastasized lung cancer, so it's kind of like a secondary form of cancer, and so that's what the coughing and the shortness of breath is. I actually coughed up a piece of the cancer. There's a piece that was blocking my main airways that I actually ended up coughing up, and that was last year in February. March last year. And that actually stopped the coughing, but then the coughing came back in July, August, and so they sent me for another CT scan, and they said that the cancer has grown, so that's when I was referred to palliative, to the hospice for palliative care and stuff, and so I had to kind of process all of that. And
how do you process that?
I think it was just, for me, I process things internally. So for me, it's kind of, thinking about things, and also talking to God, praying about it, and just coming to, I ended up sort of just, coming to, there's nothing I can change about it. There's nothing I can do to make things any different to what it is. And so when I came to that realisation, I was just like, okay, let's just get on with it. And my oldest sister, because we don't have parents now, my parents died, so my dad in 1992, my mum 2018. So my oldest sister, she was actually stuck in Australia for about 5 months. That was COVID, so that was at the beginning of this year. So she came back in March, and so I had to sit down and tell her all of this stuff. So, I was talking to her about being referred to Palliative Care, and also too, about making a will, doing an advanced care plan, all of these things. And, I got a hospital bed. So, she's just, my sister's, she's like the one that doesn't cry. I'm the one that cries all the time. Right. I'm the one that gets emotional. But to see her, quite emotional at me telling her this stuff. And then I said to her, look, I can't change anything. This is life and this is how it is. I said, I just need to live, this. But I said, I don't want to live with regret. I want to live my life to the fullest. I want to enjoy life. I want to, sort of be around people who, I love and care about. So family, friends, so I'm just going to do that. And so,
phenomenal.
For her, she said, that was quite encouraging hearing that from me. But I said to her, look, I've had longer to process this than you, so she took some time. She still worries about me, and her kids, tell me that, quite often they find her crying, and she's just like, oh, my sister, poor sister. So, but I also feel that, because she's the oldest in the family, she takes a lot of the responsibility in terms of, we don't have parents now. And so this is what I tell my other siblings. I said, she feels responsible for all of us because we don't have parents here. And so for me, it was trying to get them to, be more supportive of her because she's going to need their support as well. So
that is phenomenal of you to think about them as well, right? In the process of you dealing with, I guess, what your condition is bring up for you, but at the same time as a bus speaker, I'm just thinking of you as a phenomenal woman. That's the word that keeps coming to mind, being able to overcome all of that in your study, work through and actually be a crisis counsellor at the coalface of actually some really hard graft, and then having to work through your own crisis right now, and at the same time support your siblings to have moments of resilience for themselves because you've been able to have that time to process it for you,
Yeah. And I think also too my work as a crisis counsellor has, been about working with people, with clients while they're in crisis. And so a lot of the stuff that I've been kind of educating my clients on, I'm actually having to do for myself. So I'm actually putting those things into practice for myself in terms of, some people get depressed, or some people, they feel down. And so for me, I know that, when you're in that stage, it's really hard to get out of it. And so for me, it's about being aware of what my, being aware of myself and how I react or process or, deal with things. And so, with me is I know that, depression is something that I have been through. After I came out of my studies, I actually went into a depressive state, and a friend of mine actually said to me, look, just take a year off. You need a break to get yourself back on track. And that was the best advice anyone had ever given me, because I did take some time out after I left studies. I was off for six months. I took a break. I thought I was ready to go back, and God said no. So you have to go off for another 3 months. And then at the end of that, he provided an opportunity for me to go in and do some volunteer work. So,
the rhythms of life and understanding those for ourselves so that we can be well, right?
Yeah.
We can be well, and even in the state of physical wellness, you can still have a place of being well in your mind and your heart, right?
Yeah,
As you're working, as you're walking through this. I mean, my mum was diagnosed in 2015, end of 2015, and we were walking through her with that journey. But I just feel like the Pacific Woman is so phenomenal because you seem to hold it all together for yourselves, process this yourselves, and then you're helping everyone else process what you've already been able to work through.
Yes.
Yes. And so for you and your experience with palliative care, would you encourage other Pacific people who are going through similar conditions with you to engage with them, like with Totara Hospice or any hospice?
Yes, I would. For me, it's been really amazing in terms of, like, we work in terms of, like, we're a community. So, everything we do as Māori, as Pacific, we do as a group, So for me, being out of work now and not working, it was a way for me to socialise and be around other people other than my family, because, sometimes family, you love your family, but sometimes they can get a bit too much. But,
Must speak of families too much?
No, sometimes it's nice to interact with other people, because you also get different perspectives and different, ways that different people work, or, they process different things, or you can also be supportive and encouraging in those, those situations as well, So for me, when I was asked to join the hospice, as one of the groups at the beginning of this year, I actually started off doing a Living Well program, which was a 12-week program at that time, and they talked about, we had the nurses come in and talk about, how they can support us at hospice. They had, the physio come in and talk to us about their work. We had a dietitian come in. We've also had, people come in and talk to us about making a will and, doing an advanced care plan, and we had a social worker come in as well too. So there's all these services that are there at hospice. We've got doctors, we've got nurses, we've also got the physio, we've got
so
social
that's
workers.
For you.
So
directly for you
those,
and your family, or just you? Or more for the person who's living
who's living with the condition. But also too, see, my mum also passed away in hospice at Totara Hospice. So she was there 2018. She actually went in for respite to give my sister a break, because my sister was looking after her for quite a few years, and then she was finding that it was getting a bit too much for her and she just needed a break. So they recommended we send my mum to Totara Hospice, only because she has motor neuron disease, so it affects the nerves and the brains, and so where your muscles also shut down and that kind of thing. And so they thought that Totara Hospice would be the best people to support our mum, and so we sent her there.
And that was your first time experiencing?
And that was our first experience with it. And while she was there, they actually told us she was actually at the end of her life span, and then 3 weeks later she passed away. So we got to spend, that 3 weeks saying goodbye to our mum and spending time together as siblings, as a family, and just
especially
being
able
able
to... you weren't aware earlier.
Yeah.
So that's what was picked up, having engaged with them.
Yeah, so if we hadn't have engaged, we wouldn't have even known, and Mum would have probably died at home. But, she had this lovely big room. They put us in this big family room. They had 2 couches there that open up as beds. They brought in two single... Yeah, they brought in 2 single rooms. There was a table and chairs there, so, this is in the family room. Because my mum was originally in one of the smaller rooms and then when they said that she was at the end of life, they asked us if we would like to move to the big family room so that my mum could be more comfortable and we could spend more time with her.
So there's those rooms that were available for whole families.
Yeah, so it was a big, quite a big room. It had its own bathroom. There was also a little kitchenette so you could have food and stuff.
And those things matter to Pacific families.
Yeah. And so it was really lovely, that they kind of had offered this to us.
Yeah.
There was also I think it's a 2-bedroom unit that was attached to that was not far from the on site at the hospice, where we could hire or rent to
be around.
So we had my uncle, who was the mate of our family, from my mum's village, he came and he stayed there. So we rented that, so he had a nice place there where he could stay
and be with Mum every day,
and be with Mum. Yeah, and then we also had my nieces. They were very much into technology, so they had set up all these different cameras and iPads around the room, and we had a Zoom link, and so people could Zoom in whenever they wanted to overseas. We had, were able to Zoom into our cousins, so they were able to say goodbye to our mum. And have a chat and just see what's going on in the room at any time of the day or night.
So those weeks leading up, because you knew you could actually have all of those.
So we actually were able to prepare and stuff like that. And then the last week we just shut it down to just immediate family. So all the siblings and their children. And then, the faces on the screen actually got smaller and smaller and smaller as they were coming over to New Zealand.
Right.
So they were making their way to New Zealand.
So it wasn't new for you, Norma?
So being there wasn't new for me because I already had this beautiful experience of my mum, being there, and also the doctors and nurses supporting her. We had my nieces looking after her. One niece is, a nurse, or 2 nieces, they studied nursing, so they came and they looked. So all the grandkids looked after their grandmother, and they wanted to, and we allowed them to do that. The only thing that they didn't do was give the medication because they weren't qualified because they were qualified overseas.
But they qualified in the Pacific families there.
So they, so they wanted to do that, and so they all looked after her. They would bathe Mum and change her and all that kind of thing.
And so now with your experience with hospice at this stage of your life, it's about having access to other communities or people who are giving you information, but also fellowship.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah. So it's kind of a way of fellowship. And so now, after I attended the Living Well program, I was invited to join one of the other groups. So they have 2 social groups on a Monday and a Tuesday.
Oh,
so
lovely.
I actually attend on a Monday, and there's quite a few people that were in my Living Well program that are there as well too. So we kind of continued that connection. Which is kind of nice because, we already knew each other. And then I've also met some other new people that were there. So,
So you're still counselling in a way, Norma?
I actually ran one of the because we do different activities and stuff like that. So, Anne was looking for an activity to do, and I actually said to her, I've got an activity. So we made these glitter bottles. I'd gone to a counselling workshop, and it was like a practical counselling workshop. And so we actually made these glitter bottles. And so I had been collecting these bottles and stuff, and I was going to make some. And then when Anne said she needed an activity to do, so we made these glitter bottles. So if you go to hospice, if you go to Totara Hospice, there's a glitter bottle there that says, put your put your positive pants on, which is one of the ones that we made that day. So, yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love it, Norma. I love that the counsellor has always been within you, and actually it took the death of an uncle to reflect on his life and bring life to your life. And now in this stage of your life, you're still giving life. And what a lovely, I think for me, what a lovely metaphor of life, the glitter bottle.
Yeah.
Right? The glitter bottle that is actually just constantly within you and constantly sparking up within you so many other shining lights of glitter around you. I think, Norma, as we close off, I just feel really privileged to actually host you in this room and in this episode about, not just your journey in palliative, but actually your journey of life altogether. I feel so inspired by your life, Norma.
Thank you.
And inspired by the way your family care, not just for your mum, but for yourself, and how you have cared for your family. And so I just want the last words to be your words, Norma, in terms of, I guess, what you would want people to know about life in general, not just about palliative, but life in general, because you've overcome so much.
I think my last words would be, and it's a saying, it's a phrase, and it's on all, I have it at the bottom of my emails. It's actually from the Bible, but it says, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow springs of life. And for me, it's about guarding your heart. It's about understanding who you are and how you work and process your, within yourself to be, because you're the only one that can help yourself. You are the author of your story, and so you write it how you want people to see that story come out.
Oh, thank you so much, Norma. Write your own story, people. Be the author of your own story and guard your heart above all else. Such wise words from this wisdom bearer, phenomenal woman, Norma Lauteru. Thank you, Norma, for sharing with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a privilege.